Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And Frank from Tested.
And today we're in Frank's shop to get an interesting demonstration and a little bit of instruction on painting.
Yeah.
So we've done a little bit of painting.
We've done a bunch of painting.
Yeah. But there are so many different kinds.
There's different kinds of binders and different kinds of pigments and different kinds of solvents. There's a gajillion different ways to paint everything.
And you get asked a lot, specifically about how to paint different projects for people using, whether they're casting something on resin or latex, for example.
Yeah, I get actually a lot of questions about latex and how to paint it, because a lot of times people paint it with like acrylics, or they'll mix acrylics with latex and it doesn't bind real well, or it doesn't stretch the same, so it'll crack. The best way to paint latex is with rubber cement paint. And we've done that on Zoidberg and on the Rancor, but I never really kind of gave the real nuts and bolts of rubber cement paint.
Awesome. So we have a latex mask in front of us. Who made this?
My buddy Tim Shea made this. If you scroll through my Instagram, I'll probably post this when the video goes up. Tim's my buddy, and he gave this to me a couple years ago out of a mold. He doesn't even run this anymore. He doesn't make these anymore. So I've wanted to paint this for a while, and it's a good chance for me to ruin it.
Yeah, it's a good looking mask. You're not going to ruin it. You're going to make it so much better. So of course, let's first talk about materials. Rubber cement paint.
Rubber cement paint. You need rubber cement.
Aha.
So I usually get this brand of rubber cement, but I'm sure if you go to the craft store, Michael's or whatever, whatever rubber cement, you can get them in smaller cans too. You don't have to buy gallons. Get whichever one.
And that's your binder?
That's the binder, yeah. And then you need a solvent to thin it out. And I use naphtha. It's for Frank. It's a solvent. It's kind of hard to find in California sometimes. But I think anywhere else in the country you can find naphtha pretty regularly.
Yep.
I'm not sure about other thinners for rubber cement. I know that there's a specific thinner for rubber cement. I haven't tried it. Most people I know just go to naphtha. It's a crappy chemical. You don't want to drink it or breathe it or get it on your hands, so be careful.
All right, you have your binder, you have your thinner, and then you need your pigment.
Pigment is oil paints. So I buy big tubes of oil paints because we go through a lot of them here in the shop. You can get little tubes, and there's cheap brands. I haven't really noticed the difference between buying the really nice artisanal, handcrafted tubes versus whatever the cheapest brand they have is. You just need pigment to put into the paint.
And then your tools, I see airbrushes and hand brushes.
Yeah, I'm gonna use a bunch of hand brushes, do a lot of those techniques like we did when we did the model kits, where you put color down and then wipe it off. There's a lot of really cool little details in here, so I'll probably start with a wash of just some browns, just to kind of pop out some of the details, and then start going from there.
You're gonna brown it up and tell the story of this latex mask. Yeah. Well, we're gonna let you get started, and then we're gonna have you narrate and tell us what you're doing, how your thought process is going, and come out with a really cool looking mask.
Cool.
All right, Frank, you're mixing your thinner, your binder first. How much of each?
I kind of eyeball how much naphtha and rubber cement there is. I basically want to thin it down to a point. It doesn't have to be all the way thinned down for I thin it down more for airbrushing versus brush painting. So this is just to give me a jar of base. So basically with this base, then I can mix it down into whatever other colors I want to do for my passes. And like I said, I'm going to start with brown.
So Frank, in this first pass where you're just adding your coat of brown, is the idea to put brown over all of it, or just get in the crevices?
Well, I kind of only want it in the crevices, brushing it all over the place and then wiping all the excess off. And then I even take a little bit of naphtha and even polish more of it off. This just helps pop out all the really nice detail that Tim sculpted.
So Frank, how do you apply that without keeping it splotchy and wiping off that brown, so you only stick in the crevices? Make sure you don't wipe that away, but also make sure it's not splotchy all around, it's not overlapping.
Well, part of it is finding the right ratio between your pigment and your binder and your thinner. And there's not really a set formula of what that is. It's kind of getting the feel for it. If you put some color on and it's covering too much, then you have to either thin it out or add some more binder.
For this first airbrush pass, what are you trying to do here with this red?
You think about somebody that's drunk and they end up getting a red nose and red ears, and this looks like a fun zombie that I'd want to go drinking with. So I want to give him, big bright red earlobes and bright red nose hole. And just kind of spot around a little bit of red, just to kind of give some color breakup on the rest of the head.
And then for the second pass, you're using a blue, and
it's kind of a green, like a minty green color.
yep, keeping it fun.
Yeah, I mean he's a zombie. He's a fun zombie, so I want to make him green. That's kind of fun.
And then you're also using a brush as you're airbrushing.
Yeah, like as I'm kind of spattering some stuff around, sometimes I want to soften what's on there or kind of move it around a little bit.
Does that keep it even? You're using the brush to spread it around?
It's partially keeping it even and partially like, you know, you don't want to make something look like it's airbrushed or look like it's just hand brushed or too painterly or something. So when you start combining those techniques, that's when you can kind of, find that kind of happy medium between airbrushing and hand brushing.
Okay, now taking the hand brush back to it. Are you pulling off paint at this point?
I'm trying not to. A little bit came off, like when I was trying to get around the corners of the eyes. I wanted to keep those reds in there.
It looks like you're cleaning the teeth.
Yeah, I'm actually just shoving some brown up into it just to give it a little bit more contrast in the corners of there. And then I'm just kind of throwing in like some spottiness, like whether you call it age spots or just blotchy skin or something like that.
And you're using that brown, you're again going into the crevices, the places where there are cracks.
Yep, here and there.
The ears, above the brow. But you're not going through every single nook and cranny.
No, you wanna give the eye a place to settle. You don't wanna detail the whole thing. So just make little things pop here and there, crispen up some things like the little holes in the top of his head and any little rotten bits on his ear. Like just make some stuff pop a little bit.
Right, it's not like a contrast slider where it's like enhanced contrast across the whole thing.
Yes.
It's selective contrast.
Yeah, correct, yeah. And then, I think we all are in agreement that it needs something. It's missing something. Like I think it's pretty good, but maybe a highlight or something like. Maybe I'll throw much more yellowy green in there to pop some highlights here and there. Right. I don't want to put a lot. I don't think it needs a lot, but maybe just a little bit. So maybe I'll airbrush some yellowy greens in some spots.
At this point, the original idea that you had, you're at that point now. You had your brown base, you have the browns in the cracks, you have that mixture of that green, blue, and red, and you can take a step back now and say, what else does the sculpture need? What else can you add?
Well, it almost feels like a Basil Gogos painting, and you got to figure out what that next color is that he would throw into it.
Okay, Frank, so you're going back to the airbrush and you chose another color.
Yeah, it's kind of a bright yellowy green, just to kind of throw some highlights in spots. Again, you don't want to like go do this on the whole mask, because then anytime you add another layer or another set of details, you don't want to just make the whole thing homogeneous, because then it's really boring to look at.
It's with purpose, and so you're kind of targeting like the brow and...
Yeah, it's kind of just finding places you want to make pop a little bit. You know, like,
would you consider this like the highlights?
Yeah, kinda. I think the whole thing is starting to look a little bit like funhousey. It's got a lot of colors going on. There's a chance that maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and I'll decide to do a whole wash of another wash of brown to tech it down, or like maybe a fleshy tone just to kind of subdue all of these bright colors. But I mean, that's usually what I end up doing, is painting something again the next day. Right,
and speaking of the browns, once you're done with this wash, you're gonna go in with the brown again, and then re-add in those details.
Yeah, every time you add in another color, you don't want to wash out those dark recesses from the browns. There's still stuff that pops through from that very first wash I did, but you just want to pop out some of the deeper spots.
And then finally for the eyes, what did you do for that?
I ended up just putting some oil paint on the table and using a little bit of the rubber cement paint base and kind of mixing it as I went, and just kind of hand brushed in a little bit of like a titanium, like an unbleached titanium, like a creamy white, and then a little bit of blue just to give it some color. I want another color in there somewhere. because I apparently didn't use enough of every single color.
And then about after an hour of painting, which is where we're at right now, do you take a step back and look at it? Because you've been looking at it pretty up close up.
Yeah, it's usually pretty good to look at it in a camera or in your phone or something like that. You know, like when we did the model kits, a lot of times I was taking pictures with my phone just to see how things look in a different light. Not really
Different
a light,
lens.
but yeah, you're so used to looking at it with your eyes. Sometimes taking it outside and looking at it in daylight or looking at it the next day gives you a whole nother feel. But if you look at it in your phone or in a camera, that'll just kind of bring some things to light and see where you want to change things.
And it looks like you have one last step to do, Frank.
Yeah, I want to seal the rubber cement. Rubber cement is a glue, so it's still kind of sticky, and it'll stick to itself or stick to other things. So you want to seal it, and there's this stuff called V-Mat or V-Gloss that you can get. That's a rubber cement sealer. If you use the mat, you can wipe it down with like alcohol, and then paint again later. With the gloss, you can just repaint or paint over it if you want. But it gets rid of that tackiness, and it doesn't screw up like any adhesive properties or durability of the paint. So if you're using if you're using latex to seal like some foam armor or foam weapons, and then you want to paint it with rubber cement paint, then you can seal it with this stuff, and then it's not going to stick to itself or stick to other things.
This has been an awesome paint job. I love that we got to not only see you do it, but also go through your mental processes as you were painting it. How do you feel about it?
I think it's pretty good. Like most things that I do, I end up thinking about it that night or the next day and ended up repainting it. When I'm doing something for myself, I have the luxury of starting all over kind of. So who knows, I may change this tomorrow, but art's never finished, it's abandoned.